Hey everybody, Lonnie here. All right, we're moving right along. This is part 5. We're going to take that forecast data that we just pulled from Dark Sky and got it all ready to go in our conversion function. We're going to send that off to OCS now. Similar, we're going to create these types. We're going to create some streams. Just go through the whole process. We'll do a little code cleanup along the way, just to get everything organized. And you'll kind of just see the flow of how this is working with this new data source. Okay, the architecture. If we look at the architecture, we can see that we've got this top part completed with the weather station and a collector right into the data store. Now we're going to, we have our forecast data coming in. Now we're going to finish up this collector, getting it written to the data store. And then of course, after we're all done with that, we'll start pulling the data out and use that to populate the Angular front end application. All right, let's get out of our PowerPoint, come back to our application. Okay, so here's our application where we left off in part 4. I did want to make one note here that I noticed that I left out the R in services for the project name. So I went ahead and changed the solution to add to R. I also changed the project name to add to R, and I changed the namespace to add to R. So now we have a correct spelling of Atmo services. Classic developer can't spell things, so I hate it. Anyway. So now we're going to go ahead and we have our 2 collectors here. I want to take some time to start consolidating some code because we're going to do a lot of rinsing and repeating here. So I want to create a new folder. And I'm going to call this core. And under this folder, add a class. And I want to call this SDS helper. This will be just things where code that both the collectors may utilize, because you know we have some duplicate code happening right now. So the first thing that's duplicate, if we look, is we have all this connection information is the same in both classes. So I want to go ahead and I want to pull this out of our forecast collector, and we'll bring it into our helper here. Public class. Make this a static class, and then bring in the proper references here, and we need to bring that one in. Okay, that looks good. And then everything's private here, so these 2 will be public. Okay, let's come back to the forecast collector here since we have that. And let's see, the weather station collector, we can delete these items. I do want to come back to core here. I want to get rid of this namespace once again, just for simplicity. So it's going to create some problems here that make this will be the SDS helper dot metadata. And .metadata, and we'll just copy this, and we're going to paste it in a couple more places here. Get this metadata, and then we have the data service. Okay, so we also have this duplicate code here where we're sending in a stream. We're getting the first to default. We're looking at the types there and all this information. And then finally, we're writing the data here. Okay, so I think what I want to do is I want to pull out this code, and we want to use that we're going to basically send in an ID and the type. In this case, it's weather station. Send in those 2 things. And then it'll return a stream. It'll either create the type and stream if needed, or if not, it'll just return the stream. So let's go ahead and cut that, bring that in here, and we'll call this, we'll do a public static. It's going to be async, and we're going to have a task. We're going to return a stream there, and then we'll call this get or create type and stream async. It's a long one. And we're going to add a few things here, but let's get our code in and then we'll look at what we need to add here. So we know we need to add an ID. And then the other thing that we need to bring in is our SDS type builder, it looks like. Let's get that resolved. We need to get link also in here. Let's get that resolved. Okay, and then we have this weather station, and we need to make sure we're returning this stream. So the weather station here, we need to make this into this class into a generic. So in order to do that, we just come over here and we do T, and this T will, whenever we call this, we'll pass in whatever the type is. And then wherever we're going to use that, we'll just put a T here. So this will get substituted in, and then we'll be able to use that in a more general type of way. The last thing is we need to here. Let's go ahead and let's return our stream. And let's get our task namespace resolved here. Okay, and then so this now, if we're going to call it from the weather station, here we can just do something like this: var stream, and we can say SDS helper, and we can get or create type and stream async. We're going to pass in the ID, but we're also going to here, we're going to put in our weather station. Class definition, type. So this line will do everything, take all that code, and this should be of type. This is awaitable, so yeah, we need to make it await. Okay, now this should be of type stream. Okay, so now we're resolving that. Okay, and so we come back to our collector class, forecast collector class. We have, we're going to do our write data. And the write data, let's see, read data. Let's see, this is read data for forecast, right, from dark sky. And then we're going to, now we're going to pass in our data here. And this is going to be called, we're just going to call this napa.pluto as our base. This is going to be our base name that we're going to use to build our streams off of. And I'll show you what that looks like. The get data async. Okay, so we have the write data async, and this is going to be our forecast object data. Okay. All right, we don't need any of this. We're going to set up a call here, and what we want to do is we're going to do stream, and that's going to be equal to the SDS helper. Yeah, we'll add that, and we're going to put in our, in this case, we want to do the first part, which is going to be our forecast current. We want to pull that in, and then we'll send it the ID. So we need to create an ID for the current type and stream. So let's go ahead and do this. ID equals, and then we'll take this, we'll call this our base ID. Okay, so this is going to be our base ID, and we'll add to that forecast current. And then we're going to pass that in. Once we get it, we can take our data service, which we know now is SDS helper, capitalized, and we're going to pass in the forecast current, and we'll pass in the we'll have the stream ID, and the data. Did that again. Oh, wait. The data here is data dot, and we want to pull in the current object from that, the overall forecast object. Okay, so that takes care of, so this is going to be our right, current values here. And then we're going to do something similar where we'll take our ID, we'll recycle the ID, and we'll go ahead and we'll put in our base ID. But this time I want to do we want to do forecast, and we want to call this daily. It's going to be the name of our type, and then we're gonna have and then we just take our stream and we do the same thing. We're going to await an SDS helper and get or create, and this time we're going to type in, we're going to put in forecast daily as a type, and we'll pass in the ID. And once we have that, then we can go ahead and we can write our data. So we want to see, make sure our stream does not equal null. If it does not equal null, then we can do a for each loop here. And we're going to take our data.daily, right, and iterate through each one of those days. From there, we can go and we can do an await operation. And we're going to write to the single stream, but we're going to write multiple values, right? So we're going to be writing 8 values to the same stream, but they're going to have different timestamps. So we'll do our SDS helper data service, and we'll do our update value async stream ID, and then finally we want to pass in that item. That'll be the data. And then once we have all of that, I think we're done. Let's check real quick. I think I might have skipped over something here. Let's go back to our SDS helper and take a look. Yeah, I need to do something with this description here. I have the snapshot values. That's not necessarily what we want to have. I think what we need to do is we're going to have we need to pass in the description here. And do something like populate that. And then we'll just populate that from outside. So if we come over to, say, yeah, we're working on the forecast collector here, we can set our description here. We'll have our description. We'll set it up, and we'll set in we'll do something like a forecast current values for, and we'll put in that base ID. And then same thing down here. We can set our description, we'll recycle it, and we can say forecast daily value for base ID. And then here, of course, we got to pass in the description, and here we got to pass in the description. And then we'll probably have to go over and fix our weather station here, because yeah, we don't have the description here. So let's say this description here would be description, and we'll say this is going to be snapshot values for, and we'll put in the ID. And we'll pass in the description here. Let's get a semicolon back there. Okay, I think that looks good. Let's go ahead and fire that off, see how it works. I'm going to put a breakpoint right here. Bring over the Azure. Okay, then we're going to write data, so I'll step into this function and come over, and this should get or create a stream called Napa Pluto Forecast.current. Okay, so that did happen, and then we're going to write data to it. And there's the ID, forecast.current. Okay, and then we're going to come in and we're going to do our daily. And so we should create a Napa Pluto Forecast.daily along with that description. And if we have a stream, which we do, we'll start populating our data items. So here's the first item on 1013. And I'll go ahead, make sure that we return that successfully, and go ahead and stop. Okay, we'll go ahead and stop. Now I want to find out if do we actually see the data in here. Let's come back to our services here. So we look at types. So now we have forecast current and we have forecast daily types along with our weather station type. If we look at our stream, we have our snapshot, but now we have the forecast.daily and we have the forecast.current. If we look at the current, we can look at the data and we can see, okay, we're getting some data in here. That's great. If we come over to our trend and let me change our namespace. I'm going to change the namespace to Atmo so that we can actually see the data coming in. And if I look at the forecast data for temperature high and low, and we want to look at maybe for this month, I can see that I have the high and low. Let's add those. Let's stack them on top of each other so we can see the high and low there. So that's pretty cool. And then if we want to see, are we getting our temperature in, I'll go ahead and add that. And we can see we've had a few reads of our actual temperature coming in, but we're not writing it consistently yet. We're going to have to deploy that to Azure as the Azure function and put that on on the timer every 10 minutes writing values. And then this will write values. These will get updated going forward. So that looks really, really good. I like that a lot. Okay, so that I think pretty much sets us up for the last step in here, which will be to deploy our Azure functions to Azure, which will be super simple. And then we're going to moving on to doing the API and the front end app. So my name is Lonnie. Thanks again for watching. I hope that you're finding this series useful. And if it seems like it's a lot of new stuff in the beginning, it's okay. I mean, that's always the way it is. But we're just stepping through this one thing at a time. You can always go back, review the videos, make sure that you're following along. All the source code will be available on GitHub, so you can pull that down, and you can start trying to get your own application to work. Okay. Thanks again for watching. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.